This lesson was going to focus on instrumentation in intercultural training. A little bit of background information. Instruments have been used in intercultural training since the 1970s. Compared to other disciplines of study, intercultural training is fairly new. It's a fairly underdeveloped field. Fowler and Mumford's 1999 work, Intercultural Sourcebook, is the most substantive work on the subject of intercultural training. The purpose of this lecture is to answer the following question. What are the relevant instruments for intercultural training programs? What are the issues to consider when making the selection of an instrument for an intercultural training program? And what purposes can instruments serve in relation to the other components of an overall intercultural education or training program? When we think of intercultural training and instruments for intercultural education programs, we really need to think about two groups. One, it's used to measure the qualities of an organization, so on an organizational structure, and then the other group of instruments to measure the characteristics of an individual person. First, we'll look at the organizational side of instrumentation and intercultural training. We'll look at organizational assessment and development and some of the instruments that can be used in these organizations. When it comes to organizational culture, a good one is organizational climate inventory, as you see here on the slide, and who that's by, Cooker and Lafferty, and Cook and Zumail also did one. Culture for diversity inventory is a good one by the Center for Applied Research, and then assessing diversity climate. These three are good for organizational culture. For equal opportunity climate, the Military Equal Opportunity Climate Survey is an excellent one, and the University Equal Opportunity Climate Survey is another very good one, as you see here on the list. And we'll look on the individual side, personal assessment and development. For intercultural development, there's a good inventory here by Hammer and Bennett from 2001. On cultural values and value orientation, there's several of them. Intercultural sensitivity inventory, horizontal and vertical individualism and collectivism, self-construal scale, the value orientations survey, the 4-value orientation inventory, and intercultural conflict inventory. So those are some really good ones for cultural values and values orientation. When we come to cultural identity, there's 10 of them here, several really good ones. Bicultural involvement questionnaire, multi-group, multi-index, ethnocentric, ethno-cultural identity scale, I should say. The personal dimensions of difference, the black racial identity scale, cross-racial identity scale, white racial identity attitude scale, acculturation rating scale for Mexican Americans, the Sun-Elu Asian self-identity acculturation scale, third culture adolescent questionnaire. So you see some of these are very good for those from different cultures, working in different cultures. There's some really good stuff out there. Once again, some of these are free and some of them have a cost to them. And when it comes to learning styles, the Learning Styles Inventory by Kolb was updated in '99. Then for global awareness and world mindness scales, there's the cross-cultural world mindness scale, and there's the gap test. Also, cultural adjustment, culture shock, and cultural adaptation. Cross-cultural adaptability inventory by Kelly and Myers from '99. Culture shock inventory from '94. Overseas assignment inventory from 1999, and then the socio-cultural adaptation scale. That one was also produced in '99. So those can help you with cultural adjustment, culture shock, and cultural adaptation. So I'm just kind of grouping these on these slides for you according to the needs that you may have for the training or education that you're doing with a group on intercultural education or training. Personality characteristics, I think all of us are really very familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and then there's another one, the Singer-Loomis type development inventory. For intercultural and multicultural competence, there's a multicultural awareness knowledge skills survey and the culture general assimilator. For prejudice and racism, there's a scale or an instrument called the colorblind racial attitude scale that was finalized in 2000, and then the attitudinal and behavioral openness scale from 2000. So some good ones on that if you're measuring those tendencies in a group. Now I want to focus a little bit on some issues you need to consider when you're selecting an instrument for your program, intercultural education program. What are the requirements for using the instrument? Once again, is there a cost? Is there a licensing fee or something like that? How's the instrument scored? Is it by computer or is it by hand? What are the major test administration issues? Are there certain things, pencil and paper, or can it be on a computer? Does somebody have to monitor it or proctor it? How much does the instrument cost, which I've talked with you about already, so you take that in consideration information according to your situation. Our accompanying materials available, so supplemental for bounding or explaining some areas, some things, maybe even some videos giving examples. Our training programs even available. Does the instrument that you're looking at or the intercultural training program you're looking at, maybe you've purchased one, offer training somewhere that you can have that, or a consultant in the area? Is there theoretical and empirical support for the instrument? And this is really critical. You want to make sure that you're using good, validated instruments. And is the instrument, like I said, a valid and reliable measure? The ones that I've listed in this presentation are, and so you just want to make sure that they've been validated, they've gone through the proper IRB, and they've been validated. Will the instrument be useful for the situation that you're measuring? And so if so, in what ways? You may want to do a Myers-Briggs personality, but if you're wanting something more specific about a world mindedness scale, you want to make sure that you're using your instruments in the correct way, in the correct manner for the application that you're presenting to. And is there evidence that the instrument is being used in intercultural training? If so, in what ways? Even just validate that. Like, what other organizations are using these instruments and how have they been used? Maybe even be able to look at some research that's been done with that instrument that you're considering using or would like to use. Here's just a top 10 list for purposes for instruments and how they relate to the other components of a training program for intercultural education. One purpose is they assess personal development. Very efficient way to do that. More again here on the second purpose of efficiency, assessing and developing organizations in a very efficient way. It helps to analyze audiences. Number 4, explore cultural, racial, and ethnic identity issues. So you can do that in a fairly quick way and an efficient way with these instruments. It helps to demonstrate cultural forms of human diversity. Where are the tendencies for the folks that you're working with? You can present theories and bridge theory to other practice. Theory informs practice, practice informs theory. So when you go through your instruments with a group or individuals, then you can then take that information to help you when you're teaching in your intercultural education program in the areas that you may need to focus on. Number 7, examines topics salient to the training program. There again, just what do I need to emphasize in this training program based on the results from the instruments that we've used in your program. Helps to overcome resistance. People are able to see like more and less of a mirror, mirroring back to them the results. It helps to facilitate database training. And number 10, verify the training activities as being useful and significant for what the whole purpose of your training in the first place and why you're doing intercultural education training. It really helps to validate and verify that.